To order. Welcome everyone. Thank you for being here tonight and joining us for this meeting. If you would, I would ask you to stand and let's have the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Item number 4 is the adoption of tonight's agenda. I would appreciate a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
So moved. Thank you.
Seconded?
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Item number 5 is our call to the public, and we do have 2 pieces of paper for call to the public. Any of our other audience that is interested in speaking to the board this evening, we do ask that you fill out a request to address the board, and they are right out where you signed in for this evening. So without seeing anyone jumping up to go get a piece of paper, we're going to move on with these. The first one to address the board this evening is going to be Cheryl May. Yes, please.
Front?
At the podium
Gotta get on
into the
camera.
microphone.
Oh my gosh, okay. Well, I haven't been in this room since December of 2004. It's lovely, decorated. It represents the district very well. And so the first thing I want to do is say thank you. I so appreciate you volunteering for this very important board work. Been there, done that, so I know the time and energy commitment that you're making. It's really important. And then I just have a really kind of easy statement, more or less, to make. I was at the community Mat Force meeting last month, and I got the pleasure of meeting Chino Valley Resource Officer Jeff Pizzi. I was trying to remember how he told me to run. Pizzi, close. But anyway, the thing about that was he gave us a report about his interaction with our student body, especially this year in comparison to last year, and just kind of the things that he's called in on and the things he does with the students. And so I see that he's made it really important to have a relationship with them, one that's no nonsense, but also professional and very approachable. That's the feeling I got. And what I really want to say is that I thank you and want you to know that I appreciate and am fully approving the support that you're giving him. I understand that he knows our principals well, and especially our superintendent, John Scholl, and that relationship is one that's building a strong foundation for the children as they're moving through the younger grades to high school. And you've taken a strong stand as far as having marijuana on our campuses. And I think that's a really good thing. And so that's the reason for my visit and my statement tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. It's refreshing hearing things like that, so thank you.
Well, that was what I was feeling. I have, no idea. I can hardly imagine what you've been through the last 2 years, but it hasn't been easy. And I live in this district, and I have since 1984. So it's very important to me to be a part of the community. And I also went to the town council because I know that Chief Wynn is using money from his budget to fund this resource officer position. And in support of the position, the relationship, and so on. So I've marked my calendar, maybe you guys will too, for the annual kickball tournament that they're having in May.
Yes.
With the 8th grade students. So,
Fantastic.
anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My 7-year-old just this morning as I was dropping off at school said he loved Officer Biscayne.
All right, our second call to the public is actually from one of our board members, Mike Fogel, who I just want to preface is speaking as John Q. Public. He is not speaking on behalf of the board. He is just addressing the board as the public. So thank you, Mr. Fogel.
And thank you, President Thomas, the rest of the board, Superintendent John Scholl. For the record, my name is Mike Fogel. I have lived in Chino Valley for 29 years, where my wife of 42 years and I have raised 3 sons. I'm a retired educator, having served this district for 21 years as a high school teacher, as a coach, a librarian, and as an assistant principal. And I currently serve on the school board. I've relinquished my seat just for a moment and cross the dais to enable me to speak a little bit more freely about my candidacy for the Arizona Senate and how it relates to the public schools in Arizona and more specifically, Yavapai County. Our public schools, excuse me, in Yavapai County have been relegated shamefully to the poorest of the poor. Arizona is currently 51st in per pupil funding in the United States. And this status is nothing new, as we have been battling for this unfortunate distinction for 30 years. Within the state of Arizona, our district, as it turns out, finds itself in the lowest 5% of funding. This was also evident last Tuesday when I went to the Capitol to testify before the Senate Education Committee. Rarely are the issues of rural Arizona schools mentioned. This is why we are the poorest of the poor. Our kids and families deserve a different kind of leadership in state government, and I'm calling for that change. Now, there is some good news. There is no need for us to be the poorest of the poor. The state's economy is strong. We are swimming in tax revenues. We can pour more money into public schools right now and without ever having to raise taxes. We just need to change our legislative priorities. Finally, I'm running with Kathy Ransom and Neil Sinclair on a clean slate for democracy to remove corruption from politics and strengthen our democratic institutions like traditional public schools. I can guarantee you that I will be the only candidate for Arizona Senate from LD1 that will serve you in a manner that will resolve the inadequate funding issues of this district and those in the rest of the county. The time is now for new leadership in government. I ask all of you to support our campaign and to act now. If you're so interested, I would encourage you all to get a hold of me. I'm sure you know how to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fogel. Look, I didn't even have to turn it over.
You mean I made it?
You made it. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the board this evening? Fantastic. Seeing none, we're going to move on to our information and discussion items, which the first is our student council report. And I believe we have a representative here.
Yes, that is me.
You are not Leslie, are you?
No, I'm actually
Just thought I'd ask.
I'm Leslie with a W.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm standing in for Leslie because she couldn't be here today. I'm the student body vice president. So, to get started, us as student council, our first big event is happening this week. We're going to AASC, which is the Arizona Association of Student Council. It's a big convention that's hosted at North High in Phoenix. We will be leaving Thursday. We're bringing 12 people, and we'll be back Saturday. So we'll be spending the night in Phoenix, and we're going to this big convention. It's all about leadership, and all the student councils of Arizona go there. Just today, we finished our crush cangrams for Valentine's Day. Kids could buy a piece of paper, and we tape it to a can, and then we deliver it to whoever they want that can delivered to. We sold approximately 110. And it was a service for our school, not necessarily a fundraiser because we don't make money off of it. With between buying the cans and the kids buying the paper, it evens itself out. So it's more of a service for our school to just make it a better place. And what is also a service is our egg extravaganza, which is coming up in April. Kids at lunch, we will hide eggs around our campus, and kids at lunch can hunt for those eggs, find them, bring them to us, and they get prizes. It's just a fun thing that we can do for the Easter holiday. And then prom, biggest thing of the year, is happening at Sam Hill Warehouse in Prescott. We will not be buying a DJ because we have our own. He's been working as our DJ for 3 years, and we, quite frankly, are disappointed with all of the DJs we've hired in the past. So it's just an extra expense we can save. And we will be buying a new light set so we can compete with those DJs that we would have been buying. So ours is going to be better. This will be April 16th from 8 to 12 p.m. $60 for a single ticket and $100 discount for couples. And the person in charge of this is our 11th grade class president. And towards the end of the year, for a gift to our seniors, we will be doing a senior trip. It's to Disneyland in California. About 75 seniors have said they want to go. However, we do not have the money currently to get a second bus to get all of these kids to go. So what we've been doing is we have talked to the Chino Valley Education Foundation. We're going to talk to the Lions Club, and we're working with the Chamber of Commerce to hopefully get that extra money so that we can afford 2 buses so all 75 kids can go, because we don't want to say no to everybody. Because it's $160 per kid and it's an overnight trip to California. So it would break our heart if we had to say no to somebody. So we're really trying to gather the money. And we, as student council, we're putting money forth as well. The bus is about $2,000, so we have to gather that money, and it's quite a lot, so we've been working on that. And that is it.
Wesley, will you come back and report on the conference to us, your AASC conference?
Either I will or Leslie will.
Fantastic. Any questions, comments? Great, good job. Can anyone donate to the senior trip if you're unable to raise all the funds?
Oh, yeah, I forgot. We're sending out letters to the community to ask for donations, so that's what we're doing for that.
Thank you, appreciate it. All right, next is the Yavapai County Education Foundation grant update. Mr. Rice. Josh Steinberg. Sorry, didn't read far enough.
I'm not Miss Bryce.
You do not look like her.
So first off, well, I'm Josh Steinberg. I teach the CTE program at Heritage Middle School, the woodshop program. And I want to say thank you to you guys for allowing a program like this to come forward in middle school. And thank you for the electricity put into the facility. We obviously needed that. So I was awarded the Yavapai County Education Foundation grant for $500. And we have already spent some of that. We're using that for safety glasses, wood glue, scroll saw blades, and some brooms. The program is definitely in its beginning stages, and we have a very long road to go to get it to where we want. But the kids are enjoying it. It's been a big success there at the middle school, and I think it's going to do really, really, really well.
Well, congratulations on being the recipient. Any other questions or comments?
I have a comment real quick.
Yes, please.
I want to commend Mr. Steinberg for the work he's done. He's gone out into the community, he's hustled, he's gotten donations, he's identified some equipment that was a good price that we were able to buy. It's really, this is a program that's teacher-led, and he's doing a fantastic job in energizing those kids to do this program, and we're happy to support that kind of energy. So I want to give some kudos to him as well.
How many students do you have right now?
75,
My goodness.
26 classes.
Very practical things.
And it's considered an elective, correct?
Correct, yes.
Very nice. Great. Well, thank you so much and
All right.
congratulations
Thank
again.
Thank you.
All right, item 6C, Mr. Scholl, we're going to talk about the topic of the night.
This is the aggregate expenditure limit. There is a presentation up on the screen for those that may be watching this at home. This same presentation is available on the school district website. It got put up this afternoon. If you go to ChinoValleySchools.com, at the top of the page, there's an aggregate expenditure limit button. You go to that, there's all kinds of documents, including this presentation. If you cannot see it, or if you want to look at it later, it is there. So a little bit about what the aggregate expenditure limit is and how it's going to impact Chino Valley schools. So wrong way. Oh, come on, you. There we go. What is the aggregate limit? Well, the aggregate limit is, you know what, I'm gonna actually walk up here so I can read it. The aggregate expenditure limit is in 1980, the expenditure limits were placed on all levels of local governments by a referral to the voters by the legislature. And the town has gone through this in its self-rule, that's what it's called?
Home rule.
Home rule, where every 5 years, they go through an election to go above the budget of 1980. It's called home rule, and the citizens of Chino Valley vote on that to go beyond that budget. It was approved by the voters at special election prior to the November election, where voters decided the Prop 13 proposal. It created a baseline year with a growth factor to limit the spending of government entities, cities, counties, community colleges, and school districts. For school districts, an aggregate limit was applied, which worked off of the 1979-1980 base year plus a growth factor. Cities, counties, and community colleges have not been able to stay within their limits. They have sent them to the ballot to be increased 77 times by cities, 3 by counties, and once by community college. Can you hit the space bar and see if it goes? Perfect. What is the limit? The limit is determined by adjusting the 1979 to 1980 expenditures for all school districts to reflect changes in school population and inflation. In 1986, they added 10% to the limit, and that was a vote of the state people of the state of Arizona. Federal funds, state grants, other funds are excluded, and a local voter-approved funds are excluded. So if it's a bond or an override, they don't count. So if you think about what school in 1979 and 80 looked like versus schools now, technology, special ed, English language learners, these are things that have grown immensely. Our special ed population right now is at 20% in Chino Valley. 20%. The nation's average, I think, is about 14%. These are students that cost upwards of $50,000 to $60,000 to educate, that we have to pay for. And that's not included in this. The special ed funding is included as part of the calculations for student budgets, and it doesn't cover everything. But at the same time, it's not included in what the initial baseline was. Okay? So the statewide expenditures, taking away those things that don't count, is about $7.2 billion. The constitutional limit is just over $6 billion. That means right now, there's a plan, or if everything goes as is, that the state as a whole, and this is not a Chino Valley issue, this is not a Yavapai County issue, they're using all the numbers from the entire state to do this calculation, not just Chino Valley. So we have, as a state, it's expected that the state will exceed the limit by $1.154 billion. A lot of money, I understand that's just kind of, but that's every single district in the state of Arizona. Does not impact charter schools, because charter schools did not exist in 1980. Okay? That means that it's about 16% over the limit. Go ahead, Karen, please. What does that mean for Chino Valley? There's 3 main funds that we have to cut. We have to cut our maintenance and operation fund. That pays salaries, utilities, things like that. DAA, District Additional Assistance, that's capital, our capital funds. And then our classroom site fund, which is also called Prop 301. That the classroom site fund, Prop 301, 100% of that goes to teacher salaries. So we have to cut $2.7 million. 16% of our budget with 25% of the school year left is what we have to cut. Think about that, cutting 16% of your budget with 25% of the school year left. About 85% of our budget is people. So in order to cut 16% with 25% of the school year left, it's people's salaries. Go ahead, Ken. Okay, so issues with the limit. Schools don't look like they did in 1979. Special education was in its infancy at the time. That was prior to K-3 reading and ELL increases in funding, before career and technical education districts. the kind of stuff that Josh was just talking about. The FFA program that we have here, our computer network technology classes, our biomedical classes, our sports medicine classes, everything that happens out at the CTED, at the Career and Technical Education Center that Yavapai College has, all those did not exist in 1979, 1980 timeframe. It uses, this is a big one, it uses prior year number of students to calculate this year's number. If you think about what happened last year, we were in the middle of a pandemic. The state as a whole lost 50,000 students, just no longer enrolled in school. We lost over 100 students that we've actually gotten back this year. So this year's limit is based on last year's numbers, which were artificially low because of the pandemic. Arizona low education funding is kept it below the limits so far as increases in funding have been happening. There's the 20 by 2020, which was the governor's initiative to get money into teachers' pay. There is the special ed funding, gifted funding, the restoration of district additional assistance. We used to only get 15% of what we were supposed to get for capital. We now are getting 100%, but we may have to give up 50% of that just to meet this limit. So these expenditures have put us over the limit. And then the last one is our Prop 301, our classroom site fund. It used to be a proposition. It was passed in about the year 2000. It was 20 years long. So what happened is when it was a proposition, it wasn't part of this limit. Then the legislature said, we want to keep it going. Otherwise it would have sunset and that money would have disappeared out of teacher salaries. But when they took it over, instead of it being a proposition, it was now put into the limit. So that's part of the calculation. Go ahead. So this gives you a chart of what the blue line is, what the aggregate limit shows, and it's pretty much steady since 2012. It's not going up a whole lot. It went down initially, then went up a little bit, and then down last year, and then up. The red line is what school spending looks like and what it's expected to look like all the way through 2023. So we are going to have the same problem next year. Go ahead. So the timeline in this whole process, by May 1st, this would have been May of 21, there's estimates that are determined the annual basis for the limit. On November 1st, we found out how much we were going to have to cut. This is the big one, March 1st, which is in 2 weeks from tomorrow. The legislature has the ability to waive the limit. And we'll talk, there's something that happened today that I'll talk about in just a little bit. But they have to have a 2/3 majority in both the House and the Senate down in the legislature. And if they can vote, make that vote, and this would basically waive the limit for a year. And then we're in the same issue next year, and they would have to either take the same vote, or I'll talk about another option that they can do to fix this. If they don't do anything by March 1st, we have to cut 16% of our budget with 25% of the school year left. And we have to decide or change our budget by April 1st. We'll have to do something, put something in place well before that in order to get this accomplished. Okay, go ahead. Two-part solution. I talked already about this. The short term, avoid a crisis in education funding by legislatively overriding the expenditure limit. This afternoon, both the House and the Senate issued their resolutions that would waive this limit. All that is basically they've dropped what they call drop the bill. So it's now out there. The language is right. What this is exactly using the numbers that I gave you, that we could waive the limit by that amount. So that information came out, and the board got copies of that, and that's on azleg.gov, I think is what it is, where you can find that information. So those resolutions have been published. The positive thing about that is that both the Karen Fann, the Senate President, and Mr. Gowan, the Speaker of the House, have co-sponsored those. So we have the House and Senate leadership that are on board with these resolutions. They still have to vote on them, but at least they're out there. Okay, that's the short-term solution. Long-term is refer to the ballot a solution that addresses the issue going forward. Okay, this is part of the Arizona Constitution. And so they could redo the calculation, they can get rid of the calculation, whatever the vote says. But that would be the long-term solution. And the legislature can take the lead on that as well by referring the question to the voters in November. Okay, go ahead. Is that it? Looks like. Two questions that came up that I want to share. I've talked to a couple parents and I've talked to some staff members. No matter what happens, well, first of all, we cannot make that $2.7 million cut unless we cut days of school. End of story. We can't do it. Okay? There's gonna have to, if we have to cut, we cannot go the remaining 70, or I'm sorry, I think there's 35 days or so of school in the fourth quarter. We cannot go every day and make that $2.7 million cut. Just can't happen. But the two questions that I've had, one is from parents. Is my child going to graduate? And my answer is they are going to graduate, no matter what happens. Seniors, well, I see Mrs. Wolf shaking her head. This is not kids' fault. This is not the fault of kids. The kids will graduate. Okay? As long as they were set to graduate, we're going to do whatever we can, and kids are going to graduate. That's something the board has that decision on, and we would come to the board to make sure that happened. Okay? That's part of the plan. The second question I have from employees is there's most employees, particularly teachers, they don't get paid over the summer. So what the district does is take a little bit of their paycheck out of each pay to pay them over the summer. Okay? The concern was, am I going to lose that summer pay? And the answer is no. You've earned it. It's your money. It's held in trust by the district. We can't take that money because it's not ours. It's not the district's money. So that would be paid out. However, but you would not lose, employees are not going to lose summer pays. Okay? Want to make that clear. So from here, where do we go from here? So we have a March 1st deadline. We have a March 9th board meeting. If nothing happens by March 1st, we're going to have a plan, and we've talked about some preliminary ideas and a way to get through this. But we would come back on March 9th and let the board decide, is this the plan that we want to move forward with? And then probably another meeting after spring break that would involve Mr. Livingston and a updated budget revision before April 1st. So
If the bill does not pass.
this is all, that was what would happen if the waiver through the concurrent resolutions did not pass. Exactly.
Make sure
Yes.
they understand that.
We're hoping, and I was very hopeful when this dropped, the concurrent resolutions. That means the legislature is moving forward on it. Okay? It's just, we were hoping that this was going to take place probably about a month ago, right away, and we wouldn't get to this point where we had to worry about it. There's some political wrangling going on involving Prop 208. I'll let you do your own research on that. But that's a big part of it is what's going on with Prop 208. Again, you can do your own research on that. But again, we cannot survive this and stay in school the entire time if this is not waived. Questions for you all?
I have a question. So obviously there's a lot of parents that are concerned. I know that we've all gotten phone calls and emails and everything like that. But there's a lot of children that are concerned. And I know that a lot of them are, considering with the pandemic and stuff. I know my child that's in junior high has had a lot of kids that are kind of freaking out, thinking, a lot of these kids can't take being out of school. So I don't know what the solution is, obviously, but your solution is to, at least we're going to keep them in school. Can you talk about that at all?
Well, I don't want to
Make any promises? Understand?
exactly. I can say is right now the plan is not to close for the whole fourth quarter.
Okay.
There'll be some of those days that we're in session and some that we're not. That's where we're at right now.
I just think that helps ease a lot of people's minds right there. But, my biggest concern obviously is the kids that are worried if, kids don't want to be out of school.
And this is the last thing that we want.
Yeah.
We want kids in school. We really do. We also, if we also want teachers and staff, we want to do what's best for kids and minimize the impact of teachers and staff. Because if there's a large impact to teachers and staff, they may not want to come back next year and not want to be a teacher or a staff member, because this may happen again next year. Because we're looking at the same exact situation a year from now. So it's important that this be taken care of, that minimizes the impact on kids, on families, and employees. Because it could have a long-lasting impact that could be devastating in the district for many years. And again, this is not us, just us. We are 2.7 million. Mesa Unified, $73 million that they need to cut. Tucson Unified, I heard $54 million that they need to cut if this happens. And it's just a matter of scale. They're Mesa Unified, the largest district in the state. Tucson's right behind them. So I think Cindy has a comment.
Actually, I think
Oh.
you had a question. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so John, if it doesn't pass, and I'm hopeful that it will, especially with the resolution in place now. There isn't a politician who would vote against it. If it were to occur and we would not be able to have school, or we're gonna have to eliminate some days, does that mean we can still fulfill all employee contracts?
There would have to be furloughs, which there's language in the contract for that. And so there would have to, so the
Would you
entire
explain
contract,
furloughs?
no. But there'd be furlough days that employees, and we're talking everybody, from superintendent down to whoever, would have to have furlough days to save that money.
So would you explain furlough?
Furlough is basically a short-term layoff where they're not working for a short period of time. Benefits would stay in place. Everything stays in place except for their daily rate. Yep.
Thank you.
Did you have something?
Yeah, I think we need to be super clear that the money exists.
Thank you, yes. We actually have the cash. We don't have the legal authority to spend the cash that we have. So it's not because of fiscal mismanagement. It's not because of budget issues. We based our budget on the number of students that we have by a calculation, just like every other school district in the state. We have the cash, but can't spend it because we don't have the legal authority because of the constitutional.
And I think I just would also like to mention that the board does not have the authority to override that. This is a state level issue, not a local school board level
And
issue.
just to speak to that, Mr. Carter, who's this county superintendent, he actually writes the checks for the school district. If you get a paycheck, his signature's on that. So he has made it clear that it is actually against the law for him to approve what are called vouchers, basically checks, if it exceeds the budget, not the cash. If it's a budget account, he cannot exceed the budget or the cash if there's no cash, but he does not have that legal authority. So even though we may have the cash, we cannot go over the budget if this takes place. The other question that may come up is, well, districts have ESSER money, which is the stimulus money or ARP money from the federal government. The Department of Education has made it clear that that is for COVID-related issues, and this is not COVID-related. And they said we cannot use that money to make up for this deficit. And they made that clear as well, the Department of Education did. So we have to take our existing funds, maintenance and operations, district additional assistance, which is capital, and our classroom site fund, which is teacher pay. Those are the funds that we will need to cut in order to get that $2.7 million.
John, could you explain how it is that, or from what authority, we ended up with the cash?
Well, that was part of the budget process. So we did the budget process, did the proposed budget in
Chino Valley
the
budget
district
process?
did. The district did. We had a calculation that was based on legislative values per student that we were given. We did the proposed budget in June. The same proposed budget was adopted in July. And we are on what's called current year funding, which is our funding is based on the current number of students that we have. And so we did a budget revision in December because the number of students that we were estimating actually went up. So our budget went up a little bit in December. We'll have to, if everything goes, hopefully we won't have to worry about this. We'll do a final budget in May that's based on the number of students that we have. And that's the money that we are given. But that was based on a calculation the legislature gave us. So the district didn't even come up with that number. We don't have it. When we do the district, I mean, when the district goes through the budgeting process, there's no discretion. It's a formula based on the number of students and the number of the amount per student that the legislature determines, and some other factors that the district has no control over. That determines the budget. All we do is go through the process with the numbers that are given to us.
Every district is the same.
Every district has the same number of dollar per student, and there's a couple other factors that are different, but that's for the most part it.
So is it correct to say that in the last legislative session, the legislature approved the $1.2 billion that it now says is over the budget?
Yes. And there's some state laws in place that determines the amount annually that has to go into effect. For example, right now, our budget is going to go up 2% next year, our maintenance and operation budget, based on an inflation factor and state law. So the legislature doesn't even have, that's even out of the legislature's hands because that's already passed by a prior legislature on that budget increase, which is 2%. Even though inflation is going up 7%, we only get 2%. So that's something that's already in place, that's automatic, and it would be any additional funds that the legislature decided to give to the district would be on top of that.
Any additional questions or comments? Thank you, very informative. Yeah, fingers crossed. All right, item 60 is our superintendent's report.
All right.
Mr. Scholl, keep on.
Couple of items here. First of all, the COVID update is attached. Very pleased with how things are going. If you look at this chart right here, on the week of January 16th, we were at 1,000 cases per 100,000 people in the county. As of the week of January 30th, we're half that, 504. The February 6th numbers come out on Thursday. I anticipate that to go down the numbers that I'm tracking down to about 250. So it's a very precipitous drop. And that's the entire state has experienced the same numbers. When you look at our percent positivity, the week of January 16th was 33%. It's down to 26%. I think that's going to be in the teens come this week, which would be the week of February 6th. The numbers come out this week. So things are looking positive. The number of cases in amongst, and I'm tracking that also. There were weeks, the end of February, where we had 31, 47, 43 school-age children testing positive for COVID in the county, in the 30s and 40s. This week, We're talking about, or this past week, 7, 6, 13, and 16. So less than half of that. So the number of kiddos countywide is going down as well. So questions on COVID? We're going to continue as is, and things seem to be working out pretty well. We do have a lot of people out, but there's just this the crud going around. That's normal. We've had it in 2019. It was in December. That was going around. Now it seems like they're not even necessarily COVID related. It's just sick people. Yep.
And the flu's back this year.
Yes. Flu's back. Legislative update. So in here, there is a legislative update. The district belongs to a group called the Rural Arizona School Coalition. And we get together and with the guidance of some lobbyists, they basically tell us what's going on, and then the group, which is other schools in western Yavapai County, talk about it, and then we may support, we may oppose, or we may just take no action on each one. There's 1412 baccalaureate degree. Basically, they may change substitute certificates, so you do not need a bachelor's degree. There's already a process for that we've been advertising as a district for emergency substitutes. This would make the emergency substitute process the same for all substitutes. There is 1211, which requires school districts and charters to post on its website a list of learning materials and activities used in the classroom, including websites, worksheets, and more. This is a concern just because of the amount of work that it takes. It's unfunded, and if a teacher wanted to use something last minute, it may limit that because it hasn't been on the website. So this is, we are a proponent of parents being involved with what goes on in the classroom. How that is done, if it's not a burden to the school district or burden to the teacher, this takes up time, important time that the teacher may have. Civics Test, this is from one of our LD1 legislators. Right now, the civics exam is a 60% passing rate. This would change to 70. We don't really see a huge impact from that. Have we had anyone not graduate because of the civics test?
No.
Yeah, so it's not something, we've had really good success with it, something that will continue. We don't see that being an issue. 2124 doesn't really impact us. That's where some common school districts, which are elementary school districts. We have a lot in this county: Kirkland, Skull Valley, Model Creek, which is Yarnell, Congress. They actually tuition their kids to districts that have high schools. A lot over in the Verde also, Cottonwood Oak Creek and stuff like that. Well, they do it a little different because they have a union high school district. But there's one example was, I think, down in Congress elementary school district. They send kids to different schools, and the amount for the same student at each school was significantly different. And so they want to try to do something to fix that, and they're thinking about just getting rid of tuition. There's some issues with that we're talking about, but that's what that is. A school district lapsing, that's where if a district had less than 150 students in a year, and there's a fair number in Yavapai County that fit that bill, then the county school superintendent and the county's board of supervisors could actually dissolve that school district and have it be absorbed by neighboring school districts without a vote of the people that are involved in that school district. So that is a concern. I know that the county school superintendents are really pushing that. We think that they have it down to maybe 25 students, and there's still districts in Yavapai County that have less than 25 students. And then the county school superintendents would like to get that down to 8. And we still have one school district with less than 8 kids in Yavapai County, believe it or not, Crown King. Beautiful school, and a pretty big district, but they have very few kids. School library books. This is where districts would have to basically post books before they buy them for review. Also, we would have to keep track of give lists to parents that requested it of what kids are checking out of the library. Again, we are a proponent of bringing parents into the classroom, but the burden on the school is just an additional unfunded mandate that the school district would have to deal with. School buses, student transportation. For those that know, you remember at the beginning of the year, I was driving a white bus picking kids up, or in our case, it's a yellow bus. This would formalize some of that. Part of the problem is what they're proposing is not does not follow federal law. So there's some issues there. And then last is school facilities. This is 2180, school facilities replacement renovation funding. If you look down at the bottom, they can deny new funding for buildings if a district has a D or an F. So districts that are struggling academically, which a lot of times they're also struggling financially, get less money.
Reward for being good. Criticism for being good.
Yes. And so we have just in general, the philosophy of this group has a is against that. Just because it's penalizing districts that in many cases, it's not even their fault, are struggling, and they need better ways to help them out than taking money away from them. Questions on the legislative update? So I'll try to be bringing this to you while the legislature is in session and keeping you up to date on that.
Nice.
Thank you.
Last thing is our next board meeting is a special day. It was scheduled for March 14th initially. We moved it to March 9th because March 14th was during spring break. So our next board meeting is Wednesday, March 9th at 5 o'clock.
Miss Karen, would you pretty please send out a reminder?
Pretty easy.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Shull this evening? Thank you for all of those updates. We'll move on to item 6E1 and 6E2. Mr. Livingston, financial reports, please.
Okay. President Thomas, members of the board, district administration and staff, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to add an item. It's just a quick review of the 2021 financial report, and it could be considered part of the consolidated board report. I've got 158-page documents. If you want one, you can certainly have one. I would like it back at some point. It's nice to have when people show up. This is now, it should be today on our website. You can go to financial transparency, and they changed, I talked about bureaucracy, but I don't know who did this, but for years it was comprehensive annual financial report. For some reason, the bodies that review, the government finance officers and Arizona school business officials and School Business Officials International changed it, so it's now an ACFR rather than a CAFR, so don't get confused if you see an annual comprehensive on there instead of a comprehensive annual. It's our report for the year ended June 30th, 2021, and I'd just like to go over a few highlights, and again, if you want to take one, you certainly can. Page 24 has some nice circle graphs, and it's got the percentage of the 23.6 million that we spent last year. I'd like to just review where those percentages were by category. 49% was spent on instruction last year. Non-instructional services, 8%, student transportation services, 6%, maintenance of plant, that's custodial, that's facilities maintenance, at 12%, support services administration, 12%, and support services to students and staff, 13%, and a couple of sentences. And again, our private sector auditors, Einfeld and Meach, put this together after hours and hours. They were here probably 35 hours on site, August and November. And I did probably 70 hours work preparing for this, and a lot of staff did, and Kathy and Little spent probably just as many hours as I did with student attendance reports and data. And this was a couple nice sentences. The following are significant current year transactions that have had an impact on the change in that position. Increase in operating grants and contributions of $2.6 million, primarily due to increased grant funding related to COVID-19. My experience with the district, we've had 4 COVID-19 funds. Together, they equal 6.15 million, almost 6.2 million. We came into the ESSER 3 funds last year, the 2021 year, that was year one for those funds. Decrease in unrestricted state aid of 666,000, primarily due to state funding formula factors. Increase in construction expenses of 937,000, staff salary increases. Increase in operation of non-instructional services of 505,000 due to increased operating costs. And so there's going to be some change from year to year. The 2020 year, 21.3 million spent. The 2021 year, last year, 23.5 million. So $2.2 million increase. Federal and state governments and charges for services subsidize certain programs with grants and contributions of 6.5 million. And this is sentence is kind of interesting to me. Net cost of governmental activities, 17.1 million. So you take the operating expenses, 17.1 million, financed by general revenues, which are made up of 6.2 million of property tax, and then state and county aid of 9.6 million. So we do get aid from the state and from the county. There are districts out there, probably 8 to 10% of the districts, that don't touch state aid or county aid. They apply the minimum property tax, and the assessed value is so high that brings in sufficient revenues for the operation of the district. That's a quick summary. Any questions I might be able to speak to as far as trends? I can get back to you and get a specific answer on that if you'd like.
I'll follow.
No, good job, thank you.
Thank you. These ones I copied, there's 2 of those, and then there's 6 nice new ones here. They're a little different color. They came right from the auditor's print shop. So moving on then to the statement of the period January 1st, 2022 to January 31st, 2022. I've got a report there in your bound book. I'd like to summarize a few things there. First one, our M&O fund, our main operating fund, unencumbered amount at the end of January, 5.25%. Our capital fund, 610, we have sometimes called DAA or just District Additional Assistance, 21.6 unencumbered. And 620, our adjacent waste fund, 100% is unencumbered. So we haven't spent a penny out of that. Cash fund balances.
Can I ask, I'm sorry. Adjacent ways, I seem to remember, maybe John can answer it. Wasn't there to be roadway improvements around territorial, sidewalks put in and so forth? And I was by there today and the same old road is there and I see no sign of any improvements.
Right.
Whatever happened to that project?
So with adjacent ways, which is money that we can only use for fire lanes, bus lanes, or improvements next to the school district property. For example, sidewalks, curbs, and gutters all along the high school were done with adjacent ways. Also, the expansion of the intersection at 2 North and 1 West, that was done with adjacent ways. So there's 2 things that we were budgeting for. One was a fire lane on the farm for some new buildings that we're gonna go in. Those buildings proved to be fairly expensive, and that project was put on hold. Then the other was to build up a reserve so that when the town moves ahead with the improvements on 1 East over by territorial, that the district could pitch in to do the sidewalks, curbs, and gutters along the property line. So that's still a couple years out. So we're saving this money and building up this pot so that we can contribute to that project and basically do the improvements next to the school district property. We also have a need for some improvements to some existing bus lanes and emergency lanes that we may dip into this money for. Any money that's spent out of adjacent ways actually needs to be approved by the school facilities board to make sure it meets the requirement of the law in spending this money. So we can't just spend it willy-nilly. There's actually a state approval process to allow us to spend it.
So it's really the town still has not been able to budget that project.
Well, I don't know if it's actually on their timeline. So it's not like they're, there's other projects that may be ahead of that, but it's scheduled for a couple years from now. So it's not, I don't know if they're just putting it in their queue and they'll work it out at that point.
I don't know. just looking at our school sites, that would seem to be one of our high priorities for the access in and out of territorial. That's the only reason I ask.
Right, and if you have kids over
If you have
territorial.
Kids over there, it should be a real priority, trust me.
Right, there's issues, we have, typically, there's a line all along that comes out onto Mahan and sometimes goes out onto 1 East to get into territorial to pick up those kiddos. So, we've done some things better, we've moved the buses out behind on the fire lane. So that's helped a lot, because it used to be out front. So, we moved the buses, but still it's quite crowded.
Yeah, the parking lot's been changed, configuration's been changed and all too, but still that access, no sidewalks, it's sad. Yeah, I'm sorry, I happened to be driving by again this morning, and it just annoyed me, and then I knew, obviously, I'd seen that we're not spending it yet, so I had to ask.
The plan is to spend it on the town's timeline, and it's on their schedule.
You should drive by about 2:25, 2:30. Let me know how that goes.
We're gonna be there,
Yeah,
we're gonna be there around that time Wednesday, so
Okay.
we will get to experience that.
So that fund is scheduled to receive another 100,000 this year from levy. Started at 198,000. We've added so far from the property taxes collected in the fall, 81,000. Now we've got 280,000 in there. We'll probably get another 20,000 more this year. And that's the goal, to just add 100,000 a year. If you get too far ahead of city planning, I guess, then we don't want to be seen as just banking it. We want to work with it.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. So I would like to call your attention, there is on that page in your cash fund balances, we now have spent $143,000 on our school facilities board projects. We've got weatherization projects at each school. These are assessments to see how to weatherize. If you toured a couple of our Del Rio and Territorial, you see there's building issues. We're trying to do some weatherization assessments and design studies. The weatherization studies are complete, the roofing repair studies are complete, and the heating, ventilation, air studies, air conditioning studies are nearly complete. That $143,000 that we spent so far on those two different contractors to do design is gonna go up by about $360,000 by the end of March. It's in funding. All the requests and invoices have been turned in, and when we're all done, we're gonna have about $520,000 spent on these, just design and assessment. Then we'll get a bid on the street in March, and general contractors will bid on that, and we'll select a contractor, and then school facilities board might take up to 120 days to fund that for construction. So that's where we're at. We've made progress in the last 6 months.
And just to be clear for y'all and the audience, this is not money coming out of the school's budget. This is money that the school facilities board, a state agency, actually awards to the school to upgrade facilities that may be in need. And this is weatherization is painting, to be honest. They call it weatherization, but it's painting. And then the roof work and the HVAC work is because most of our classrooms are cooled with swampers. And if you want to enjoy the day, I'd say the first week in August, go into a classroom with 35 high school kids in a swamper cooled room, and you'll see what our kids are going through and what we're working on to fix. So.
Just 2 more points then. If you follow the cash flow along, at the end of January, we brought forward $3.4 million. That's cash, all funds, and student activity. Well, I won't get to student activity. But any questions on the reports as far as cash funds or district operations from the month end of January 31st?
I'm looking top on me. No, that's it, thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move on with the
Student
student
activity.
activity as well.
Yes.
At this point in the year, the $134,000 that we have in the student activity account is right where we want to be. There's quite a bit more activity than there was last year at this time. Student activity funds are being used and donations are being received. Year to date, $24,000's been received, $8,800 year to date has been expended. So that's right where we're at. We have good internal controls on these funds, and so the person that receives the donations, it's not the same person that deposits them, so we've got segregation of duties there, just like we do with our district. And that's it for that report.
Thank you. All right, item 7A through I is our consent agenda, which is an action item. Could we have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Any questions, comments? Second?
I'll say.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Great. Item 8A, make sure I did that correctly. 8A, administrator on assignment, strengthening instruction for special populations. Ms. Evans.
So I am bringing a proposal to you this evening to help address the learning loss in our most vulnerable student populations that we experienced during the pandemic. As you might recall, with our ESSER 3 funds, we needed to set aside 20% of that money from that grant to use for learning loss, recover learning loss. Last summer, we ran a very robust summer program, but we also know that helped catch kids up a little bit from, days that they may have missed the prior year, things like that, interrupted learning due to illness. But as we move forward into this year, we've taken a really deeper look at what will help our students get further faster and help them get caught up. In that initial 20% set aside, we set aside more than enough money to cover a few summers of super robust summer school. But what we know is last year people were quite eager to send their kids since learning had been interrupted all year. This year, probably not so eager, right? Because they've been in school all year. And so one thing I did, starting last spring, I meet with the instructional coaches every month. And of course, meet with the administrators every other week together and then meet with them individually. Really started asking the question about, as we go forward, where are our greatest needs? And consistently over time, I've heard this. Our burgeoning special education population, as you've heard, I've been in district 14 years. We've gone from 11.4% to almost 21% of our student population is in special education. This board has approved several new classrooms and programs over the last couple of years to help meet those needs. One thing I want to point out about our increase in special education numbers is not coming from students who have been identified internally. It's coming from students who are moving to our district. And people are moving here with children with very, very profound needs. In fact, a couple months ago, you might remember, we came and asked you to approve transitioning some of our classroom paraprofessional positions to certified nursing assistants because we have students who are profoundly medically fragile. And our classroom parapros signed on to teach kids how to read, not to make sure that the life-saving equipment children wear in their backpacks is functioning properly. So we've started addressing some of those things from a very physical needs standpoint, but consistently my instructional coaches have said a few things, and so have my administrators. These kids are coming to us really, really far behind, and our teachers don't feel adequately trained to meet their needs, because some of the teachers like me, when we started years ago, maybe 6 or 8% of our student population was special education, and they were served in special classrooms. Well, now lots of our kids are served in the mainstream, and our teachers don't feel like they have the training or the knowledge for differentiation or instructional strategies to help the kids be successful. Not only that, we need to get kids caught up. The other thing is we're back to, I came to the district in 2008. We are within 13 kids of our English language learner population that we had then. When the economy dipped in 9, we lost several students over the pandemic. You heard Mr. Schultz say statewide, over 50,000 students did report to school. This year, everybody's back. And not only are they back, we have lots of students who don't speak English. This number will astound you. I guarantee it. We have 29 students at Chino Valley High School who can't speak English. And like 20 of them came to us this year and didn't even know hello. They gotta graduate, right? Because we're all held accountable for helping kids graduate in 4 years. whether they speak English or not. And so we have dedicated a significant amount of our resources. Our Rosa Maria, our ELL director, has been teaching at the high school this year. We have a special language learner class at Heritage Middle School. We have language learner programs at every campus, but the need is profound. And the coaches told me, Cindy, the other thing we need is, years ago, Arizona passed a law that everybody had to receive a special training in helping students who were a second language. Well, the training now has been greatly diminished over time, the need for it. And as you know, from the teachers who we hire a lot of teachers who are coming to education from non-traditional pathways. Like, they didn't go to college to learn how to be teachers. They didn't go to teacher school. They have another first degree and they're learning how to teach school on the fly and taking classes at night. Or we have people who are able to become certified because of their years in industry. So they haven't received all these trainings. And I asked our coaches if these are, the third thing, by the way, was we have all this beautiful technology. We need to like devote more time in the classroom to helping people learn how to use their technology. So I asked the coaches, because remember, every building has a halftime coach. Can you guys do it? And they're like, no. We've got our hands full with people who are coming to the profession unprepared to be here. They need to learn how to write lesson plans and read standards and manage classrooms. And we don't feel like we're the experts in this. So we kind of took a hard look at it and said, what can we do maybe in 1 year with some of this learning loss money that we know now we're not going to fully use for summer school? What can we do? And I started knocking it around last summer. Started talking to John about it probably in July or August, and we just sort of let it percolate, see how things would look in the fall, see where kids are, evaluating their test scores, all their interim progress in classrooms, talking to teachers. And what we really decided is we need a super saturation for 1 year. We need a full-time person who can get into the classrooms, who has strong coaching experience, who can get like a baseline, everybody up to a baseline in helping our special education learners, helping our language learners. And if we do that, then the coaches feel like they can maintain it. But we know we need this intensive thing. And we've done intensive saturations in the past, especially with language learners. Of course, you know, people come and go and very few of those staff still remain with us 14 years later. So we really thought, how can we do this and how can we make this happen? And I even asked the coaches, can any one of you do it? Can I pull you from your coaching position for a year? And they're like, no, we don't feel equipped to do this. And so as John and I talked about it, I met with Mrs. Reeder, and you'll see her name later on your personnel report, but we have someone in the district who is the very best equipped person to take on this role. Honestly, I wouldn't even be pitching this idea to you if I didn't think we had somebody who could do it. Because the chances of us finding someone would be slim to nil, especially of this high quality. And so because it does not impact our budget, because it's designed for a year, because we believe we can completely saturate and literally provide one-on-one instruction with teachers in the classroom through a process where their individual strengths are analyzed, and then the coach works with that teacher on the things that teacher needs to be strengthened with. Maybe a little bit of small group instruction and things like that, but we all know if we had a one-day training on how to better reach your SPED students, it doesn't take hold. It's like if somebody met with you once a year and said, I'm gonna teach you how to throw a baseball, you gotta absorb it all today. Good luck. It's like that. You need somebody who's, coaching you when you're on the pitching mound. And so that's the kind of program that we wanna do. Won't impact our budget. We think we can accomplish mighty things in 1 year. That's the type of request that we're making. We think, many of you have asked me, what can we do about the learning loss? The other thing you need to know is 3 of our 4 schools, because one of them isn't graded because they don't take state tests, that's territorial, have been identified for the last 3 years in a row for school improvement. because our special education students and our language learners are not making the same academic progress every year that their English-speaking peers or non-special education students make. Duh. It's like, no kidding, right? These are kids who already struggle for different reasons. And so this is another way that we can really go about trying to strengthen what we do. We also know that Dr. Burdett's looking to hire a new assistant director. We're hoping that assistant director can carry forth special education professional development as well. So we have some other long-term plans in place. So it's not just a let's do it and then go off the cliff. It's let's do it and let's figure out some ways to sustain it. So we're asking for this position that doesn't impact our regular budget, which clearly is important. It would be for next year. And we're be evaluating the success of it as we go throughout the year. So ask away.
Real, Cindy, this is a silly question. Everything, I've read this, agree 110% of what you're saying, except for the title. The title, Administrator on Assignment, does not describe what this position is about. Is there a reason for that?
There is a reason for that, and it's because we feel like this position will be at an administrative level and have the full authority to work with teachers in the classrooms in a non-evaluative method. It's not, it's beyond the scope of regular coaching.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but it doesn't describe what the focus of this, and we've given a broad range of people from the ELL, people to special needs kids. Is there a descriptive name which would describe that, or you think it needs to stay more general to give you more flexibility, even though you have a person in mind?
Well, I will tell you this. I asked Mr. Scholl, what do you think we should call it? He said, call it administrator on assignment.
I think that the agenda item description is actually really good also. And maybe it could be added to that, which is, it's administrator on assignment strengthening instruction for special populations, which is really what this is for. But because we have paraprofessional, we have like generic titles, principal, paraprofessional, things like that. And we have our coaches are really teachers on assignment, TOAs. And so those are kind of more, the positions themselves are kind of generic. And then we get down into more descriptive as, stuff like this. When you approve the position, you're approving this strengthening instruction for special populations. So it's just a administrator on assignment, we use that, TOA, that kind of stuff. It's just a generic term.
Well, it's only a year long, so.
Yes.
I can see
And
that.
when does this take effect?
July 1.
Okay.
So John, when it comes to the classification of these funds, is that going to be classified as an administrative cost or a classroom?
Well, it'll be an administrator, but it's likely going to be instructional support would be where it would fall into the normal category of expense.
So Cindy, I'm curious about this, the person, and I'm not looking for a name, but what astounds me, if I heard you correctly, this person is qualified pre-K 12 to handle profoundly disabled, and our ELL population.
It's for strengthening the instruction. So it's not to serve the students, it's to serve the teachers.
At all levels.
Because strategies are strategies. And Mr. Fogel, you might remember, because you probably took the SEI training.
Yeah.
The Structured English Immersion training that was first required by the state. And Mr. Livingston took it, I took it, Mr. Scholl took it. Everybody who's my age or older in this room. And those strategies are ubiquitous. What's good for a kindergartner is an instructional strategy, a language learner, because it's the level of the kid and the type of learning that they need to do that's not contingent on their chronological education.
I mean, it sounds like
I know, this is I know.
Herculean endeavor for,
Yes, I know.
I mean,
We actually knocked that
every,
around.
every teacher and I can imagine, every teacher in every building is saying, yeah, I need that.
And you would be astounded. We've done some surveys. I asked the coaches to do one-on-one, and it overwhelmingly, I don't know what to do with the students that we're receiving. And the thing I love is the heart of the teacher. I want to do right by every kid,
Yeah,
and I love that.
Yeah, sure.
And I get that sometimes you need a saturation in order to have a deeper understanding. Since I know it's a very unique concept, and we are really pulling out all the stops to try to help get our kids up to snuff.
Any further conversation, questions, comments?
No, I think so.
Okay. This is an action item again. And we need a motion to approve or,
I'll make a motion to approve the request, right? Of a one-year position for the purpose of strengthening instruction in classrooms where special populations are present.
fantastic. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right, item 8B is a separation of the high school assistant principal and athletic director. Ms. Wolf or Mr. Scholl, or both?
I think, you know, if you want to come up, I'll talk about it, and then there may be questions for you.
Sure.
So, when I was assistant principal at the high school, there's actually 4 positions that were basically administrative or quasi-administrative. There's a principal, an assistant principal, a full-time athletic director, and a full-time CTE director. Right now, at Chino Valley High School, the 3 people are doing the job that used to take 4 people to do, and we have more athletics, and we have more CTE programs. So we have a principal, a half-time assistant principal and half-time CTE director, and a half-time athletic director and half-time assistant principal. So 3 people doing the job that used to take 4 people. And I'll let Ms. Wolf talk about kind of how that has impacted her and her department and the administration of Chino Valley High School.
So over the last couple of years, we've seen an increase of number of students returning to campus that have, for THC, nicotine, attendance is not being adequately monitored because of the amount of time we're looking at discipline. Students are having a difficult time getting back into being students, a higher percentage. And we've been spending a lot of time, including myself, and so we want to still continue working on our focus on building our CTE programs. And then for me, I want to spend more time in the classroom. I want to work with my teachers with data because a lot of the data I'm producing and sharing with them, but it really, in order for them to have that ownership, they need to be looking at it with me and learning how to look at the data from our benchmark testings or ACT or whatever we're using in order to make changes in the classroom for instruction. So that would help me immensely by having somebody that could just focus on discipline and attendance. So I won't have to be involved with it as much and give us just more time for other things.
So-
And not that I would still help, but it's just, it would alleviate. Sometimes the girl stuff does get with me since I'm the only female administrator.
So Ms. Wolf came to me with a proposal. She has the capacity within her existing staff to take one of her teachers and take that teacher and make him a half-time athletic director and a half-time teacher. And really, 2 of the 3 sections that are going away are athletic PE sections. So it would really only impact one academic section, and we've looked, and they have the capacity, class size to do that, to lose just one academic section. So this person would be teaching 3 periods probably in the morning, and then in the afternoon, they would be an athletic director. And so it's not any additional FTE that's gonna be added, but there is an additional expense because that person would get a stipend for being athletic director, because there's a lot of work outside of the normal day this person would be responsible for. And then also the classroom site fund that they currently get, this teacher would no longer be eligible for half of it. So on top of that stipend, there'd be half of the classroom site fund that would come out of M&O now. So that the cost that we're predicting is about, and then we extend their days, not just 146 days, they go to 158 days for half their job. So with the extended contract for athletic director, the stipend, and the addition of the classroom site fund money coming out of M&O, it would be $20,000. But we're basically freeing up half an assistant principal to help out with the discipline and freeing up Ms. Wilson more.
So I absolutely am in favor of going back to 4 positions. I think that it's needed. $20,000 kind of sounds like a drop in the bucket to me. And I'm kind of wondering why we've chose half-time rather than full-time. It seems like, as you said, athletics has grown. There's more. Is this teacher going to end up being taken away from teacher duties, maybe just a little more than what we possibly may have? I guess I'm looking at it in the long run. Would it be better just to pull the plug and go for a full-time AD and approve those funds rather than just doing it halfway right now?
We had talked about that, and what we decided was, let's take this step and then evaluate after a year. And if we need that additional FTE, half an FTE, we can come back to the board at that, maybe a year from now, and say, hey, we did this half, we really need it to add a whole. And so the other thing that we have now that we didn't have back then is there's also a part-time administrative assistant.
Right.
For some of the administrivia that this job used to have to do is now being handled by an administrative assistant or a secretary to do a lot of the phone calls and scheduling and things, and be available in the morning. So it was kind of like a baby step to get us halfway there. And if we needed to go an additional step, we'd come back to you at a later time.
And I do get that. I really do. Do you have a plan in place for the what ifs? What if the AD just absolutely has to do AD stuff during school time?
Well,
During class
in
time.
the past, they did half the position and they were able to, because now we have the administrative staff. I think that can be taken care of in the morning, and then the AD will be available in the afternoons. Because most of the stuff for like setup of games and those things happen in the afternoon. If there is a meeting at AIA, we can get them a sub just like we would for another teacher. And those are probably once a month, once every 2 months.
And this teacher actually already, the one that we're thinking about, and it'll come at a later date, is already coaches two seasons,
Yeah.
2 different sports. So he is gone a lot anyway. And it actually will probably be more in the classroom than he is now.
So when I'm gonna be honest, when I first saw this, I was like, no. Because I'm huge into athletics, and I think that that's one of the things that keeps children in school. And I'm speaking from my own children. If it wasn't for athletics, they probably would have gone to public school, because I think it keeps kids active. And so I'm really big into the athletic. I do have a concern, because I do feel like our AD I think it should be a full-time position. I just see so much on their plates, and I hate to see things get slipped through the cracks, whether it's scheduling of buses or games or anything like that. So with your question of, that you have a plan that if this does need to be a full-time position, that made me feel like a little bit better about this. My other question is, so we have 2 principals right now, so is there gonna be a third? I'm just kind of confused.
We have 2 assistant principals.
Right.
We'll still have 2 assistant principals, and then this will be athletic director, teacher.
Okay,
So right now, we really have 2 half-time assistant
Because
principals.
one of them is the CT director and one of them is the athletic director.
okay, so, but isn't our athletic director that is also the principal, didn't he put in his resignation?
That was not done officially, so he hasn't resigned, no.
That was, we're working on that, but
So
we're
he'll
waiting.
be, so that will be a full-time position is what you're telling me. It's not gonna be like a part-time principal, right?
No, it'll be full-time, the position is full-time and it'll be, half between discipline and attendance.
Okay,
And then whatever other duties, if whatever is going on, but yeah, but those are the two main focuses.
okay. I just wanna make sure that our athletic program is really strong.
No, and I agree with you on that. And because in the past we didn't have an assistant, and a lot of the transportation, those kind of paperwork things are done by somebody else currently.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Is this athletic director going to maintain coaching two positions as a head coach? I am very, very leery about that.
At this point, he would like to finish one more year and then, but he's not doing two. He's just gonna maybe end up doing one, but that may have changed already, just to do none. But I don't wanna speak for that person, but at this point, he will not be, coaching both. Our heavier time is always in the fall with football and soccer, cross country, so, he would not be coaching during that time.
Yeah, in a normal world, I would not, one that is fully funded, I wouldn't support this at all. And it's a wonderful example of how we continue to push and ask more of our people. And it's the burnout factor that I'm afraid of. And I think that something always gives. It's going to be that person's classrooms. That's going to be that person's coaching. It's, oh, man.
But
Yeah.
we're proposing this position to try to avoid the burnout.
Mhm.
We really are. And I think right now, what I'd like to see is separating the concept from the person.
Yeah.
Because you'll approve the person later. So I'd hate for the concept to be
Right.
not voted on because of who the potential employee that fills that.
No,
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
The concept is what bothers me.
Okay.
It's a matter of who the human being is. I mean, you got a super person regardless.
Right. Well, part of this
And-
cost,
and-
if we add an entire FTE, you're probably looking at the $20,000 going to, could be as much as 100. Because you can't just add, if we're adding 1/2 FTE
Mhm.
out of existing sections. So there is no cost for the base salary. If we want to add an additional FTE, you can't just add a half person. Because we're not going to find that teacher to teach a half day.
Right.
So you have to add the whole person. So we're trying to take this interim step at a less cost in order to kind of see how it works. If it doesn't work, we'll fix it.
So if I,
And if I could, I'd just like to offer just a little bit of historical perspective on it. We had a superintendent, a couple superintendents back who didn't necessarily understand the nature of the modern job, if I can put it that way, what it all involves. And because of that, believed we were overstaffed administratively at the high school. And so we collapsed a position and went to, we had a principal, an assistant principal who only did assistant principal things. And then we had a full-time athletic director and a full-time CTE director.
I remember those days.
There's more
Yeah.
work now in modern times, more sports, more games, more struggles, just all around. But also our CTE programs have gone from like 6 to, our kids can participate in 28 programs. And so when you think in terms of that, I would wager that we're understaffed all around. That we need a full-time CTE director, we need a full-time athletic director, we need somebody who just gets to be the assistant principal.
Yeah.
Because the person who's been the assistant principal and athletic director talk about burnout. Like your day starts at 7 and it ends at like 6:30 the next morning practically. So that has been really hard, and I like, I agree with everyone. I really do think we're understaffed at the high school based on the quantity of work and the quality of programs that we offer now, athletic and CTE. But because of our budget restraints and honestly, the budgeting capacity that we have right now, this is an interim proposal to try it out with the least amount of expenditure possible.
Is this a July 1st?
Yes,
Target
July
date.
1st, yes.
So this is a year-long proposal.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it could be in perpetuity if it works.
Right.
Right.
And then we would, at this time next year, if the budget allows for it. And that's my concern. I agree with everything you said.
So,
And it's really more budget driven that we take this initial step.
yeah. I'll support it reluctantly.
Maybe we can have an update, especially in the fall, when, like
Absolutely.
you said, it is athletic heavy.
Yeah.
And see how it's going.
I mean, I agree with everything that's being said. I just would hate to see either like our athletics fall, this guy's class, this person's classroom fall, the coaching fall, that's just a lot. So I'm willing to give it a shot with, and if it's not working, you guys come back and say that we need to make some changes.
Not that we necessarily have to say, I think I'd be more comfortable if this person did not coach, but that's just me, I guess.
No, not just you.
Okay.
I hope
And I'm right there with
clear.
you, but it may take a transition year so we get to that point.
Yeah, I may be really cynical here, but, excuse me, but this is my analysis. Prevent burnout from one position and just move the burnout to another. Okay,
There's potential there.
okay, all right.
I think we've discussed a lot. Again, an action item, so if we could have a motion to approve the separation of the CDHS assistant principal and athletic director positions.
Anyone?
Okay, so I will move to separate, the separation of the CVHS assistant principal and athletic director position.
Thank you. A second. Anyone?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Yes, I'll be anxious to see how it works out, and I wish for the best success.
Thank you.
Okay, item 8C, we are getting there, people, I promise you. 8C is tonight's personnel report. Mr. Schulman.
There is a personnel report along with a supplement. And I'd like to, on the supplement, I'd like you to, I'm gonna highlight number 9, which is, you just approved that position. And so that's the person that we're proposing to fill that position,
I'm with you.
which is
Thanks.
Mrs. Reeder. So,
Congratulations.
which, everything that Cindy talked about, there's really only one person that we know of that really could do that job. And so that's why we're recommending Mrs. Reeder to be taking that position. That would create an opening at the high school. I'm sorry, Del Rio, a Del Rio principal. So there would be a principal opening. Cindy and I have been talking about a plan on how to address that. We're actually meeting tomorrow with some staff members, a parent, to kind of come up with some guidelines on what we're looking for. And then we'll move forward with an interview process to fill that principal position at Del Rio. Okay. She's let her staff know, so this shouldn't be a surprise to staff. They're aware of what's going on. And anyway, this is also the time of year we get teacher resignations. The thing I'm glad to see is if you look under the new certified, we have 4 new teachers already identified. One is filling, this is on a supplement, one that's filling a position that we had at the semester, a language arts position that we lost a teacher. So that's exciting. We also have At the very bottom, one of our former Paris, who is student teaching now, is going to come back at Territorial. And so we're moving forward and filling positions, and that's actually exciting to see. Yes. One of the ones at the top, number 4, is actually another student teacher that's student teaching for us right now.
I'm looking at this and we're losing a lot of really great teachers. I know we're getting some probably really good ones too, but this is kind of sad too.
And this is just the time of year that this will happen. And actually, just to kind of let you guys know and what to expect in March, we are anticipating doing teacher contracts in March, at least teachers, possibly classified. We typically have historically done them in April, but we have to have a month, the contract has to be a month out before the teacher is required to sign it. So a lot of times we will not find out if a staff member is staying until the middle of May. When staff are leaving, it's late in the process. So the idea is to get contracts out in March, and then they would be due middle of April, and that gives principals time to recruit and hire staff before the end of the school year. And we're not behind the 8 ball because there's other districts already hiring. So that should happen at least with teachers come March 9th.
Great.
Any questions on the personnel report?
All right. Once again, this is an action item, so if we could get a motion to approve tonight's personnel report and supplement.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving right along. Ms. Wolf.
So this is,
Course description.
yes,
Go
this is
ahead.
our annual time to update our courses. If you go, and what's in red is going to be removed, and then what's in yellow is added. So on our suggested course of study on page 3, we're going to ask that all of our students in 9th grade take our career exploration class. And then in the senior year, they're going to, because of the change in staff, we're going to have the second year of our YC English classes be YC 242, Intro to Shakespeare, and YC 185, Sports and Literature and Media, which is a new class. So we'll see how our students are interested in that. And then on page 4, we just added junior for our college classes because we do allow some of our students, our junior students who are more advanced in their classes, take concurrent, as long as it's part of the AJAC with Yavapai. On page 11, it's just, we're removing the 2 descriptions of YC English 212 and 241 and adding 185 and 242.
There's some changes on 7 and 8 also, I think.
Did I skip them? Oh, sorry. So sorry about that. So we're going ahead and removing the drafting design 2, because currently we don't have a drafting and design 1. We're still looking for somebody for 1, but, and then for YC change with pre-calc, it's going to be divided into Math 182 pre-calculus and then Math 183 pre-calculus. The first one's algebra and the other one's trigonometry. So instead of a full year, those will be semester classes. All right, and then on page 18, we have just an updated description to our concert choir. We're still going to have that, and varsity choir on page 19, just updated course description from the choir teacher, Ms. Pierce. And then we went ahead and on page 20 is just the titles for career technical education and then CTE courses offered at Chino Valley High School. And the Ag Year 2, because now we can give college credit, is going to be AGS 120, Intro to Animal Industry full year. So we're That is, the second year is now gonna be AGS 120, and the kids can get college credit for that. And then on page 22, the prerequisite for the horticulture class has just been changed to Ag Year 1 and 2, or they're enrolled in Ag Year 2, so they can do those classes concurrently. Any questions so far? Okay, on page 24, on drafting design, 2, we're still having in the handbook. What's happening is that if we could find a Year 1 teacher, we don't want to completely remove it, but we're still looking for a drafting design teacher. So we have drafting design 1. We only have second year this year, so if we're building back the program, hopefully by finding an instructor, we'll offer drafting and design 1. And then on page 26, we went ahead and separated the Mountain Institute CTED classes out of the just the general CT courses. Also, that's why that information is in another place. And it just has the description of exactly what Mountain Institute CTED is and the programs that are offered. And then on page 28, because these are our dual enrollment classes, you'll just see the pre-calcs mentioned there again, because we have them in 2 spots, under math and under YC dual enrollment. And then the change to the prerequisite for the AGS 250 on page 29. And then on page 32, we're just removing the teen leadership because of increased career exploration classes.
CVHS has done a ton of work with Yavapai College over the last calendar year to kind of update and refresh our dual enrollments and the descriptions and the course offerings to better meet the needs of kids who are trying to earn their AJEC, which is their Arizona General Education Certificate. Those classes are all good for transfer to any Arizona university.
And we were really happy because we have a larger number of kids that have taken advantage of the concurrent classes on their own time, and that makes us really happy for them because we'll get more kids that will have most of their college first or second year taken care of. So we love having those opportunities for our kids.
That's great. Any questions on the course description? Yes, sir.
Heidi, I've got one that's actually in 2 places, but it's the same thing. On page 5, and it's later on also, on the requirement for the pre-calculus, the algebra course, you split it into the 2. You say for the pre-calculus course, a prerequisite of C or better in algebra 2. Is that adequate to prepare kids for that? Knowing what you need or don't need to get a C scares me to put them into a algebra class.
Well, we have students that want to challenge themselves, and we don't want to stop them from that. Most of the students that do go into these classes are A or B students, but we do have students that want to challenge themselves, and we really don't want to stop them, and the college is okay with that.
Well,
yeah.
It's
not like
that
we're having-
scares me.
Yeah.
Because I've seen what C students in math can or cannot do.
Yeah.
And my concern is, are we setting them up for failure by letting them in and they're not adequately prepared?
And then also, with that, they have to have a teacher recommendation. So the teachers will be letting Mr. Eisenberg, the pre-calc teacher, know if he feels that they are, and the counseling staff, that if they feel a student should not be in there. But we do have sometimes kids that have gotten a little bit lazy, and then they decide that they want to challenge themselves and that they really have the aptitude for it.
I didn't see anything about a teacher recommendation in here.
It's there.
Did I miss it?
Yeah,
Where's
it
it?
says prerequisite C or better in algebra 2 and teacher recommendation.
It's page 28 there.
2 year, yeah. And they also have
Oh, I see.
and/or a ACT math score of at least 22. So there's other things that can go into making that decision so the student can. There's a student that got a C in Algebra 2, and his ACT score in math was exceptional, and I called him in to say, what?
What's going on?
Yeah, so it's not like it's gonna be flooded with students who aren't motivated, but I don't like stopping opportunities from students, especially if the teacher feels they have the potential and their testing shows it. Yeah.
As long as we're not setting them up for
No,
failure,
no,
it's
no.
your judgment and the teacher's fine.
Yeah, yeah. But thank you for asking that. That's a great question.
Any other questions? Good job, as always. This is an action item. One more time, folks.
I make a motion, we approve the 2022-23 CVHS course subscription catalog.
And I will happily second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Everyone, thank you for being here tonight. See you next month.
Channel.